Hey everybody, Ryan here with Ray's latest. Today we're going to talk about Junior Camineiro's run with the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic, as well as just touch on a couple things that I've seen over the past couple days in spring training as well, and particularly in the game against the Yankees, where we've kind of seen where our full starting lineup is kind of most likely in that starting nine in that game. But first, I'm going to talk about Junior's WBC run. After their loss, obviously against the United States in the semifinal game, he was a little upset, but he did immediately return to Port Charlotte the following day, was in the clubhouse, demanded that the Rays let him play the day following. So 2 days after his World Baseball Classic run was finished, he did play in the game against the Yankees on Tuesday, which is a good sign to see. Obviously, he is young. He is extremely young, and he probably thinks he has a little bit more on the table to kind of, you know, to prove to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, you're not going to see guys like Mookie Betts and Aaron Judge and the Bryce Harpers and people like that immediately after the World Baseball Classic, like, oh my God, like, I want to play. I'm sure some of them do. I mean, that's just how they're wired. But him wanting to immediately be back in the lineup and immediately play is a good thing to see, just kind of where his headspace is at, and that he kind of knows there's not really much time to take off at this point, because obviously opening day for the Rays on Friday in St. Louis, or the following Friday in St. Louis, that there's not a lot of time to get to prepare. And obviously he's been playing the World Baseball Classic over the past couple of weeks, so he has a little bit more of that competitive edge in him than some of the other guys, and especially a lot of the other hitters wise on the roster. I mean, Aranda played, but he's one of those guys where Mexico didn't make the playoffs or didn't make the bracket play. So he's been off for about a weekish, maybe almost a week longer. He's been off. So just seeing him within less than 48 hours removed from the heartbreaking loss to the U.S. in the World Baseball Classic semis, he's wanting to be in the roster, wanting to be on the lineup. It's good to see. He says, "It's amazing. I don't know what else you say. It is a little bit tough, though, about the loss against the U.S. in the semis, but he was one of the most productive players on the team." He did go on to say that he wasn't initially sure if he was going to make that roster, but obviously, given the season that he had last year, it was kind of a no-brainer that he was going to be on the 26-man roster at some point, to me at least. But from a starting perspective, I could see where that gets a little question marks with him. But he played more than enough for them, and where he hit 350 with 3 homers, including the one off of Paul Skeens, the lone run that they had in the semifinal game. 7 RBIs and a 1259 OPS over the 6 games that they played. And it's great to see. I mean, obviously, you're playing at such a high level, and being able to do that off of the National League Cy Young winner in his first at bat, taking him yard, it's impressive to see. And if he can just carry that over, it's the sky's the limit with him. And obviously, coming off 2025 season where he was very good as well, I'm curious to kind of see how the translation from just a numbers perspective, especially with his home runs, from playing in Steinbrenner to the transition over to the Trop. I'm sure it's not going to be too much fluctuation, but like we've seen people like Brent Rooker, who hit 40 home runs last year playing in that minor league park. It is a question mark to see what are the splits home and away, and how do they perform at a major league park rather than the minor league park. And I don't think there's going to be much of a difference, obviously, like I've said, but that is something to keep an eye out on, kind of going into it and kind of see how that translates back to the Trop. But to carry on, he says, obviously, or Nelson Cruz says, obviously, we know the talent, but you find out how much he loves the game and how much he loves to be in clutch situations, the big stage. He likes to shine on those stages. So you see that and how good a kid he is, always asking questions, always wanting to learn. If Nelson Cruz, who obviously ended his career, or the very, very back end of his career with the Tampa Bay Rays, seeing that kind of praise from him towards to one of our players, especially a young player in Junior Caminero, it's great to see because obviously that means everybody else is seeing it. So it's good to see that, and it's good to kind of see how other people are seeing him as a not even a baseball player, but as a person, and him being that young, kind of with that track record with the guys who've been in the league. I mean, Nelson Cruz played in the league for 19 years. So seeing guys like that, the career long big leaguers saying things about a young 22-year-old, it's great to see those things. And him being on our team just makes that even better news to hear. And our Pujols goes on to say, I said, I think the best thing with him is he loves to get better and he loves to listen. He wants to get better. At 22, he's so mature for his age. That's another career big leaguer, Albert Pujols, Hall of Famer. It's good to hear things like that from people like that. Obviously, he says, I was really honored and blessed to have the opportunity to have him for the 6 weeks in the Dominican. I built a really good relationship with him where I still try to call him once or twice a month just to check up and just to let him know that I'm watching and if I see something, just to try to help him out. Again, Albert Pujols going out of his way to do something like this is just great news for Junior Caminero because it means that people value him as a person more than they do just a baseball player. And people don't go out of their way like this to help people that they don't like. So him being liked by all these people, it's great. And I think that just seeing him kind of continue on this track is going to be good. The next thing I want to talk about is the game against the Yankees, where we saw Yandy, Aranda, Caminero, Mullins, Fraley, Lux, Fiducia, Williamson, and Johnny DeLuca all in the starting lineup. Diaz ended up with a hit. Aranda went 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. Caminero went 0 for 3 with 1 strikeout. Cedric Mullins 0 for 2 with 1 strikeout. Simpson, who subbed in for Mullins later on in the game, went 1 for 1 with a run scored and a strikeout. Or, not right, strikeout, sorry. Fraley 0 for 2 with a strikeout. Velati subbed in for him 0 for 0 with a walk. Gavin Lux went 1 for 3 with a strikeout as well. Fiducia 1 for 3 with 2 Ks. Ben Williamson 1 for 3 with an RBI, no strikeouts. Johnny DeLuca 1 for 3 with 0 strikeouts as well. And Pepio got the start of the mound, went 4 hits, 4 hits, 5 innings, 1 earned, 3 walks and 2 Ks. With Joe Boyle coming out of the pen, throwing 3 innings, 2 earned, 3 innings with 4 Ks or 4 walks and 6 Ks. And then Hunter Biget, 1 inning, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts. So seeing that from BJ out of the back end of the bullpen there, especially in a close game against the Yankees, being able to strike out 3, he did give up the hit, but you strike out the 3 outs that you get. Who really cares if you give, as long as you keep the pitch count down, a hit's going to happen here and there, obviously. But that brings his spring ERA down to a 1.69. Pepio's ERA in the spring is a 0.9, which is fantastic to see. Obviously, his stuff is always translated well. No matter what he does, he's kind of had good looks from the mound, just from a pitch tunneling perspective and a pitch mix and velocity as well. But I think the main thing I want to talk about with this is just seeing kind of how they have that starting lineup set out. Obviously, you have Cedric Mullins in center, but you have Fraley in right and DeLuca in left with Simpson coming in off the bench there. I don't know necessarily if Cash is saying that as a kind of doing this as maybe a little bit of foreshadowing, but also to point out Taylor Walls did not play as well. Ben Williamson started at short, which I do think Taylor Walls is going to be the opening day shortstop. I don't think really that's much of a question mark anyways. But for the most part, from the top down, the rest of the lineup, that's kind of where I see this lineup standing with Lux at second, Caminero at third, Mullins in center. I think that Simpson's going to play left with Fraley or DeLuca in right, just depending on matchups and things like that. So we'll see how that translates kind of into the season. But I do think, hopefully, in my opinion, I think Fortes deserves a nod behind the plate because Fiducia is hitting 115 on the spring, and that's just not going to cut it. And I think Fortes has kind of taken that lead with the bat from that perspective. And even if there is a defensive discrepancy, I haven't really seen much between the two. But even if there is, I will take a little bit drop in defensively catching if you can get me 140 points better on your batting average. And I think that's just been the problem with the Rays from behind the plate for the longest time, ever since Zanino left, is not being able to find a guy who can hit over 200. I mean, we had Rofert last year who ended up in LA at the end of the season. He can't hit, and just everybody else that we've had behind the plate the last 4 seasons also couldn't hit. So, and you had Betancourt, who was a little bit more of a power. He was more of a home run or strikeout kind of guy, which I would honestly take one of those guys over. If you can get if you're gonna hit 180, but you hit 20 home runs, okay, that's one thing. If you're great behind the plate, that's one thing. But if you're not hitting home runs and you're not hitting for average, I don't see why you should get as much play time as you do at that point. Obviously, there's probably an analytical reason behind why Fiducia has gotten so many reps behind the plate. But I do think going into the season, I would like to see Fortes get the nod a little more than Fiducia and kind of just see how those two play out. But you guys let me know what you guys think about Junior's run in the WBC, as well as kind of what you see this lineup going from top to bottom, especially behind the plate, and what you guys think on who should get the nod opening day there. But you guys have a great one.